Oh, here we go again. Hey, everybody, it's us again. Yep, it's your two dads. Really is your two this time, and a guest. We are coming at you this time with a something near dear to me just because of my own hobby and my own interests. We've got Jason Meuschke. He's a triple threat. He's a dad, he's a veteran, and he's a writer. So he's kind of hitting us in our sweet spots here. We've got our current series. I say current because it's current to us, but no one's really heard any of it yet. But our current series of veteran interviews with dads that were in the service or service related industry, and finding out how that affected them. We're hoping to do that again today. And as I said, we got Jason Meuschke, and I know all about you. Just briefly, you have a podcast called the Sample Chapter Podcast. As I said, you're an Air Force veteran, and you're also a writer. So other than that, why don't you give us a little bit of your origin story, fill in the gaps, so to speak.
Oh boy, my my origin story. Well, I am the world's best assistant manager. I've I've been a assistant manager at about 4 or 5 different places in my lifetime after the military. No, just a family guy. I knew from a young age I wanted to be a dad. I was looking forward to a big family and looking for just what would the right person that was going to put that together. Fortunately, I found my Juliet, and life has been really good. I've been really blessed and getting to follow my dreams now with my writing and grandkids, and just having a good time with it.
Right. Yep. Apparently, a much happier ending than for the original Juliet.
Yeah.
I did see the picture that you have on Facebook, and you have like a giant family. It looks like it's Thanksgiving or something in my house because you've got so many people there. That's really cool. Speaking of, and I'm sure that they're all significantly older now than our children. But how many kids do you have? How old are they now?
Yeah, we have 4 kids, 2 boys, 2 girls. The boys are on the front and back, with the girls in the middle. They're actually Irish twins, I think is what they call them, 11 months apart. And our son is he's going to be 31 here in a couple of weeks, and then we have a 27-year-old, 26-year-old, and then 19-year-old is our youngest,
the baby of the group.
Yeah, the baby. And then we've got 6, 7 grandkids now.
Wow.
So yeah, they're keeping us busy.
And the picture does imply this, but do you guys all kind of live close together?
We do, actually. Yeah, that was the surprising thing was we settled in back where I was born, and it just kind of our oldest son had already moved home from the military while my wife was serving, and after a couple of years, he moved into our area. Our girls haven't gone very far, and our youngest son, he's the only one with aspirations he wants to move like to either Canada or go to Japan because he loved it while we were there. And but otherwise, yeah, everybody's local, and it's been pretty nice. We've been pretty spoiled as parents and grandparents.
Yeah, that is that's a good way to put it. Spoiled, because typically, even when you're kind of close, you're still like sometimes a state away or something like that. So the fact that you're all kind of within a decent distance, that's really something to be grateful for.
And that was something that we kind of had in mind when my wife got out of the military, was that we were trying to decide where we wanted to move and where we wanted to settle. And we had loved our time in Colorado Springs. We really thought about going there, but we ultimately decided, like, well, let's go back to Missouri. There was a place that where we settled into. There was an air base nearby. There's a college nearby. We were just a couple hours away from both of our families, and there were cousins in the immediate area. So we thought, well, let's move back there. We'll let our kids grow up for what little time they have left around their cousins, and they can hang out and do things that they hadn't been able to do for the last 15, 16 years, and try that out. And yeah, it worked out pretty nice.
Right on. It's almost like if you were writing the story, like that's how you would have it.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting that you are also from the South. It seems like the majority of our listeners are, excuse me, from the South. We are in Tennessee. I'm born and raised here. Dan is a transplant, but he's fit right in for the most part. But yeah, it's just weird that I don't know. It must be the accent. It just draws. It's like magnet draws more the same. Or I suppose it would draw the opposite at that point. But whatever. I've
Isn't
never
that
been good at
funny
science.
too? Yeah, I never noticed I had an accent until I was in Alaska. And then everybody was just like, "Oh my gosh, where are you from? Alabama?" I was like, "You not kidding me?" Like,
Yeah,
no.
relatively close, I suppose. But
Yeah.
yeah, I didn't notice that I had one until I joined the army, and then when I was made fun of it for an extended period of time, I decided that I would do everything I could to lose it. And I think I did for a while because when I first came back, people were like, "Oh, you from here? You don't have an accent," but it's definitely kind of come back. After all these years I've been home. So I'm just going to go ahead and take this. I'll start out first. I usually force Dan to jump in here and lead the way, but I'm going to give him a bit of a break, if only because talking makes my nervousness go down. Not sure why. Not sure if it's your profession or something, being of interest to me or something, but the anxiety was a little bit higher today than normal. But we're going to start with, I guess, the next best thing to being a dad, or at least the next thing on the list, anyways. And that was your time in the Air Force. And I know that, or at least Facebook tells me you spent 3 years in there, real close to what I spent in the Army. And most of the people that we have or are going to talk to spent quite a bit more time in the service than we did. They're usually retired. But with that being said, how would you say that the Air Force shaped you, if at all, in terms of being a dad?
Oh, wow. That's tough. I came in with a lot of aspirations. I was looking forward to. I just met the woman that I was going to marry. I just met her like a few months before we fell in love, and then I left for basic training. And so we were kind of like, oh my gosh, we're going to really try and do this or not. And while I was in, we split up and then got back together later on. And so my aspirations at the beginning was like I was looking forward to finding something I could do in the military and either have a nice career or find something that I could take with me outside the military. And I thought, oh, well, maybe I'll learn how to work on airplanes and jets and, find some kind of a career like that. But I didn't have the test scores for that kind of thing. And they were like, no, you're good as a taxi driver. So that was my job.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was interesting. I spent all my time sitting on the flight line waiting on the air crews. But I even though I wasn't a big fan of my job, I found that I was good at different aspects of it. I could learn how to do things, and that was something that was really cool to me, was discovering that part of me for the first time in my life. Was I can apply myself and learn how to do something and do it really well. And even though I had some NCOs that I didn't get along the best with, they couldn't, they couldn't look away from how well I did my job. And, and that was something that was good. And that was something I took with me later on, was wanted to impress upon my kids, was that no matter what your job is, learn how to do it well and do it in a manner that's going to reflect on you in a good way, in a positive way. So even if you're just bagging up trash, go the extra mile, look around, make sure you got all the trash, make it so that when somebody comes in, they say, hey, Jason did that. He always does a good job. And, I'm very happy with my kids that they kind of took on to that, and, never with the housework that I wanted them to do or clean the rooms, but I wasn't that good with it either at their age. But yeah, I think that's what I took from my time in the military, was that I could learn to do other things and I could learn to do them well.
Right on. That is, I think, for any branch, that is something that a lot of us can come away saying, even if we didn't love our job or we didn't like it in general, being in the military, you kind of have to learn to do different things, and to do them well, and to do it kind of fast too.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to hear you say that. I do have another question that kind of will branch off from that. But before I get there, I did want to let Dan jump in here and get with what the show is basically about. Get us a dad question. So what do you got there, Dan?
Yeah. Your decision to pursue the military, was that your own? I know it's your own choice, but like, was that your own influence, or did you have maybe an uncle, father, grandfather influence you, that they did it and you wanted to kind of like follow in their footsteps?
Sort of, yeah. I wasn't really sure what I was going to do. I knew I didn't have a college fund. I didn't have a lot of options. So I was talking with my dad about it one day, and he was like, "Well, you could join the military." He was recommending maybe not going to the Army or, Navy or anything else. He was like, "Yeah, go try the Air Force out." And we knew a family friend who was in the Air Force, and so we went and visited that, which was just funny. And to think about today, it's like I went and visited an Air Force base to see what it was like, and it's like, okay, but that's nothing about what the life is like. And but it was still good. I got to talk to my uncles, and I have a uncle that was in Vietnam. I've got grandparents, and different grand uncles. A lot of history in the military with my family. And so, yeah, that was something that during my senior year, that spring, I started kind of going around and talk to a recruiter to see what was available and what I could do. I didn't ask enough questions, thus the story with the job I ended up with. Otherwise, I could have ended up like working at the gym or, in journalism or something else that I was really interested in, but I didn't know to ask some of those questions at that point. But yeah, that's where that came from.
Right on. What about your kids? Have they come to you and said, "Hey, what's this all about?" Or have they? I wasn't here when you guys were talking, but did any of them pursue military careers based on anything you told them or watching you go through it?
No, they haven't yet. I mean, I guess they've still got some time if they wanted to. But I think they enjoyed just being a military brat and going from place to place and doing that. But then they got the inside look at it. I think they're pretty happy with their knowledge of going different states and outside the country, living in Japan for a while like we did. So they got to see that. And I think they're just taking those experiences for now and using it and applying it towards their jobs right now. But yeah, so surprisingly, none of them joined, which my wife and I, since we were both in, we thought, okay, well, somebody will probably join, but no, none of them did.
Yeah, he served in the Army back in I think the 80s. And when I became closer of age to, sign up and stuff, he said, that's an option. I'm not going to force you to do anything, obviously, but it's your choice. But he's like, that is an option if you want to go that route. And if you don't, I'll still love you the same. It's not like you have to do that, but it's an option. And he kind of told me, this is what you can expect if you, he just kind of laid it all out for me. And yeah. I didn't choose to do it. I chose to go to school, but yeah.
Yeah. That was kind of my dad. He was very open about it. He goes, I don't want you to just go find a factory job or do something else and be stuck, feeling stuck. Then he goes, I'd rather you get out and kind of have some experiences that you can then use.
Yeah.
And see what you can do. And if nothing else, I could do do my 4 years was the plan, and then get out with the GI Bill and go from there. I got out at 3 years medically after an accident. So, but yeah, it is what it is.
I can understand the medical side of things. I got out exactly as I was supposed to, but I was supposed to go to Afghanistan, and it was a medical issue that got me out of that, and then out of the Army entirely. So I know how that goes. But kind of taking things, I just broke my pen on accident. So taking things back to, further back into the Air Force, even though we were both in, 3 years for you, 4 years for me, there's things that, things about it that I miss. And I was just wondering, what do you miss about the Air Force? And not necessarily that you want to go back in it, but what, when you look back, what do you look back on fondly?
I guess the stability was something I really like. I can look back on that and go like, man, that was nice to have a guaranteed paycheck, twice a month. And you knew what date it was coming. It's like, yep, just open up your bank account. There it is. Like, yep, 1st and 15th. And that was nice. Medical, dental, all that kind of stuff. It was good to have regular dental cleanings and
yeah, and even with medical or like even disabled, we don't get dental. So that's
yeah, exactly. Yep. So yeah, there was those kinds of things. And then I didn't know that I wanted to travel. I didn't think I would really enjoy traveling. I was always kind of a homebody. I was looking forward to staying home, but I really loved my time in Alaska, and whenever my wife joined, we went to a few different places, and then like I said, overseas. And yeah, I just tried to enjoy each one for the best of what was available to us, and I really liked that. It was really cool. I mean, it's like right now I'm in San Antonio, and I'm having a good time, just kind of checking some things out, and then doing my work that I need to get done while I'm here.
Right on. That's cool. Yeah, I'm kind of similar. I would much prefer to stay home, but then when you actually force me to go somewhere, typically I'm like, oh wow, that was really fun, and I enjoyed that.
Yeah.
One more thing, at least maybe entirely, my notes are kind of messy and it's hard to read even my own handwriting. But one thing specifically about the military, you kind of touched on this, and I was curious. You said that your children seemed to, I inferred that your children enjoyed the military brat lifestyle, and that's typically not the case. Usually, moving from place to place like that, the children, at least on TV, I've never spoken to more than maybe one or two in my life in person, but they typically don't like that, the instability of being unable to to make long-term relationships. But you seem to say that your children did kind of like that, and I was wondering if that was the case. Like, did they by and large enjoy that worldwide traveling type of lifestyle?
They did. I mean, our final 3 years were in Japan, and that was such a unique experience for them. I mean, we had plus that was the advent of social media really coming online. Facebook was only a year or two old at that point. So we kind of fibbed just a little bit on their ages, let our girls have social media. Our son was already old enough to do it. And then, of course, not the youngest one. So they were able to stay in touch with some of their friends from the previous base in Colorado and go forward from there. But the base in Japan, it's just a tight-knit community, and everything's fenced in. You got to have a pass to be able to get on base. And we were, for the most part, pretty okay with letting them, if they want to run down to the movie theater, they could walk around everywhere they wanted to go. And at times they even went off base because some of the best ice cream you've ever had in the world was right outside the gate near our house. And so they could go there. Yeah, they just kind of had the run of the place. And there was buses that ran around. So if they need to go to the far side of the base for like a different pool, or the bowling alley was on the other side of the base, that kind of stuff, they knew how the buses ran and that they could go catch a bus. And okay, yeah, the last bus is at whatever time, they got to catch that last one so they can get back. Otherwise they're walking all the way home again. But I think that was part of it. And then since we left Japan, they've been able to stay in touch with all those friends, and so that's just kind of been a very special space for them.
Right on. That's cool. You're actually making me nostalgic for that, like almost small town community feel of living on base.
Mm-hmm.
But I did, take a bit of the time. So I wanted to throw things back here today. I'm trying to keep things snappy, keep things moving back and forth. So give us something else, Dan, just anything that's going to break all records and blow all minds.
All right. I'll jump right in with the dad stuff head first here. It's a two-parter. I like to ask most dads that I'm available to do this with, guest dads. It's a two-parter. When you found out you were having kids, what was the best piece of advice a friend, an uncle, mom, dad, whatever gave you? And then what is the best piece of advice you could give either a new dad that just had their kid, or any struggling dad, or any dad really?
Best piece of advice I got when I was becoming a dad would be that you'll never regret time spent with your kids. And I would expand that out to your family. You'll never regret that time. Always enjoy it. Always make the time, because, we can all make a lot of money and do things, but that time with your kids is something that you don't get back. And, you can hope to rebuild a relationship when they get older, that kind of stuff. But man, those memories of playing in the yard with your kids, or doing something with them as they grow up, going to their recitals and school plays, and even learning new math, which I still can't, that kind of stuff. They remember that. Right. And and we can all think back to times when we were kids. Yep. And things that our parents did that they probably have no idea that we think about it, but We do. We remember these little moments with our own
Yep.
parents of like, yeah, I remember helping my dad gather wood, and he's going, "You remember that?" And it's different
Yep.
things like that. So
Yeah, I had
and
as you were saying that, I had memories coming back of like just little things I got to do with my dad or my mom or even my cousins or uncles or whatever.
yeah,
But yeah,
oh yeah.
continue. Sorry.
No, I was gonna say, and then I guess the second part of that for dads, and I've expanded this to my kids as they've gotten older, and they were going to become a dad. I've told them something that my wife and I that we agreed upon is that my wife and I, we put our relationship first. We found that the relationship of husband and wife, that needs to be the bedrock, that we need to be able to get along, and we're going to argue, we're going to not get along sometimes, but we're going to be on the same page for taking care of the kids and for helping things out, because as long as we can have a good relationship, the kids are always going to see that, they're always going to feel that. And so that was our thing, and I've expressed that to my kids, is that hey, work on your relationship with your significant other, with your wife, your husband, whatever, build that up strong, so that way when you're having kids, they're going to see that as well. And separations happen, things like that happen, and then that's when you start rebuilding some things. But when you're in it, go all out, do everything you can. I've had few moments in my life with my wife where I'm kind of looking in the mirror going like, man, am I doing everything right? I've made some missteps, and I've done things where I'm like, oh, that was just stupid. And go back and work on it. And it's always a work in progress, but I don't regret it at all. I mean, I'm fortunate that I married my best friend, and my kids, I think they see that, they know that my wife and I are very, very much in love, and we've always got each other's back.
Yeah, that's something that's very important. I have a daughter, one kid, but she's I have a little girl, and that's something my wife from day one, it was kind of always there in the back of my head when I found out I was having a girl, but that we need to set the example for her of how she's supposed to be, of course. And then I, as the father and as the man figure in her life, I need to set the example of what kind of man she needs to look for.
Exactly.
Not treat my wife like shit, and because that's what she's going to go after if she sees that all the time. So I need to. That's something I'm try to be conscious of. Like, hey, even if you've had a bad day, or even if she's done something to make you mad, walk away for a few minutes, let it go, and come back and just try to get past it and show, like you said, show the love to my wife so that my daughter can see, oh, hey, I'm supposed to be loved. I'm not supposed to be abused or whatever from the partner I decide to choose later on. So yeah,
Right.
that's definitely very important, especially for it's important for Corey to do it too. But I think girl dads, that's kind of more of it weighs a lot on me. Times when I realize, hey, I'm kind of being a little snippy. I need to, chill out, go calm down, take a breath. It's not that bad. But yeah, that's very, awesome.
Yeah, and like you said, yeah, I want my daughters to see that, hey, I want you to find a guy, doesn't have to be like me, but I want you to find somebody that's going to treat you the way I treat your mom.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I want my boys to see that, hey, me saying sorry is not making me less of a man.
Yes.
That makes you more of a man to admit when you're wrong, instead of going like, well, screw it, just move on, accept it, whatever. It's like, no, make things right.
Yeah, exactly. That's I found out that just in, my short adulthood life or whatever, that if you do that, if you own up to a mess up or something, that people have more respect for you, and they think, even though you messed up, they're like, oh, at least you told me, you didn't try to hide it. I remember I did it. Corey and I used to work together, and at a car dealership, and I barely scratched one of the brand new cars right off the truck. And as soon as I got back I didn't want to, of course, that feeling inside, oh no, try to hide it, but no, I was like, no, I waited. I was like, hey, where's so-and-so? And they're like, they'll be right back. They had to step out. I'm like, all right, well, I ain't doing nothing until they get here. And they're like, what happened? I was like, nope, I'm telling my boss, and you'll find out. Trust me, because word spreads. But I went right up to her and I said, hey, look, I messed up. I said, I'll make it right if I need to, do whatever you got to do. And they're like, no, that's why we got insurance. I'm like, okay, but I just want to let you know, I did mess up. Here it is, and they're like, well, we appreciate you telling me, so that, but my dad instilled, that, and hard worker, like you were saying earlier, do it to the best of your ability, give it all you got. Even 100% of 70% is better than no percent at all. And, if you're having a bad day, but you can still give it that 100% of what you got, it's better than saying, the hell with it,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Exactly.
So to take back over for a short bit, we were talking briefly through Messenger about this, and I just wanted to be sure to get to this because I think I mentioned to you it's kind of important to me being on one side of this. You've been the provider and you've been the stay-at-home dad, and by and large, men that are stay-at-home dads are looked at with a little bit less than respect, I would say. As if it is the easier job of the two, which at the same time is disrespecting, mothers who do the same thing. And I just wanted to get a little bit of your opinion on what difficulties are actually involved in being the stay-at-home dad, and why it is not just arbitrarily the easier job of the two.
Yeah, that was that was an interesting time in my life. I spent 6 years being the stay-at-home dad, taking care, essentially raising the girls, because they were 2 and 1 when my wife joined. And my wife joined, she joined a few years after I got out. I went about a few different odd jobs, doing whatever I had to do to work. And then she came to me one day and she was like, I think I need to join the military. She'd been praying and had this overwhelming feeling, and we explored it, and it was amazing, everything that fell into place. And she was the first woman to ever join with 3 kids. And and then she becomes a chaplain assistant in the military. The job opened up the day that she went in to find out about it. So it was like, okay, something's going on. So wow. Yeah, we'll follow that and see what happens. She signed me up for some correspondence courses in writing at that time. So that's what I was doing while I was home raising the kids. And that was some fun times. I was 5 years in Minot, North Dakota, and then a year in Colorado before they were old enough to start going to school. And then I was like, okay, I need to start moving on, doing something. But, I kind of smile though still, because there's a lot of fun memories thinking about the girls and learning things about girls that I did not know, like how messy they will get, how much they will go out and play in the dirt, just like I did. I remember my wife telling me like, hey, make sure and give them a bath. They're gonna, we're gonna do something later in the afternoon. I'm like, okay, yeah, great. So I get up, give them a bath, great, get them dressed. And then they're like, well, we want to go outside and play. Okay, yeah, you can go outside and play. That's fine. My wife comes home for lunch. Where's the girls? Well, they're playing, out in the yard. I think they're on the swing set or something. I just looked out there. They were playing there. That's where they were. Now they're overplaying. Somebody in the months previous to us moving into this place had dumped a fish tank, the gravel, outside. So here's all this colorful gravel. And my daughters thought, oh, that's a sign of where the dinosaurs are buried. So they're digging for dinosaur bones and just covered head to foot in dirt and mud. And I'm just going like, oh my gosh, like, what are you doing to me? And my wife was looking at me too, like, what are you doing? Like, I was like, no, I swear they just did this. But little moments like that.
Yep.
But at the same time, we for a long time we kept a journal that we just wrote down little things the kids would say. And I still remember one of my favorite moments was I'm sitting down, I'm reading a little bit while they're playing on the floor, and my daughters are sitting back to back on the living room floor playing with something different. And one of them sneezed. And the other one says, God bless you. And the other one says, oh, you're welcome. Or thank you. The other says, you're welcome. And it was just this cute little exchange. Neither one of them ever turned around. Neither one of them ever stopped playing. They just continued on like it was just nothing to it. And I'm just watching this. And I'm starting to tear up going, oh my gosh, my daughters are so cute and they're just so friendly and kind. And I don't always think that about them, but back then they were sure sweet when they were kids. And just it was different learning how to I became the person who would prepare the meals and prepare breakfast. I'd get up and make sure my wife had a good breakfast before she went to work. Making lunches. And then my first year in, I ballooned up. I was like 265 pounds. I was just drinking, a couple of liters of soda a day and lots of M&Ms, because you got to have, your vices while you're trying to write. And I'm trying to write while they're napping and stuff. And then it became a matter of, okay, how can I work out and get that in instead? And it lots of ups and downs and learning along the way, but fortunately we made it through, and they don't think back too harshly of me. I think it was equally as tough over the years whenever my wife would deploy a few times. Like I said, she was a chaplain assistant, so she's the chaplain's bodyguard anytime they would deploy. And my wife is 5 foot, but she will kick some ass. And she was telling me, I was turning totally green with envy, because she's telling me about, oh yeah, we went out and we're shooting off the M60s and some grenade launchers, and I learned the spin kick move, and I can do this. Here, you stand like this. And anytime she says that, I'm going like, whoa, hang on. Like, what am I expecting here? I don't want to I don't want to be on the floor looking up with it. But it was really cool. And she always ended up deploying with a chaplain who was like 6 foot. Whenever she would deploy, then I'm alone with the kids again for 6 months, 9 months. And that was interesting as well, because, to do that, the first 2 times she deployed, it was during that period when I was home. The last time she deployed, I was working. had become an assistant manager at a theater at that point in Colorado, and that was a whole different experience that I do not want to do over again. Because by then we had all 4 kids, and our oldest was going through teenage angst and wanting to learn how to drive, and our daughters were doing school stuff as well, and our youngest had just started school, and I've got expectations at work as well, and it was just a lot of hair pulling and trying to focus on kids first, then work, then these other things. And I don't know how well I did in some of that. They have to tell me if they think it went all right or not, but I guess we survived. So that's one good thing about it.
Yeah, you kind of gave us, I feel like, what was a little bit of the surface of a whole lot that we could really dive into if we had the time. The deployments that your wife went on, and how she would have to rejoin the family and readjust to that. Like, we could talk about that for who knows how long. But I do not want to keep you here all night long, and I am ready to move on to my next kind of section here, as long as Dan has a chance to get whatever else that he might have had planned. We're not moving to the end or anything, but just I was going to transition to the writer thing. But go ahead, Dan, with whatever else that you might have had on your mind.
Yeah, one more quick thing. It was actually, while you were talking, you said you spent some time in Minot, North Dakota.
Yeah.
Did you live there?
We did.
Okay, right. I have a half sister. My dad had her before she was 84, and I'm 90, so he's about 6 years older than me. And she lives in Stanley, which is about an hour west, I think, of Minot. So when you said that, I was like, wow, yeah, I've been there. I know right what you're talking about. Like, so I just thought that was pretty cool. What did you make of North Dakota? I have my own opinions.
It was a lot windier than I expected. It was a little colder than I was expecting, but it was actually kind of cool. It was a nice family area. We were surprised by that.
Yeah.
Didn't have to lock your cars. Didn't have to worry about that, because everybody's, you pull in somewhere, you got to leave it running so it doesn't freeze. So that was pretty cool. And once I learned where's a good place to go fishing and catch some of the pike up there, it was on from there. I was taking the kids and we were catching, 30-pound, 40-pound pike, and that was a blast. So we had a pretty good time up there.
Yeah, that's awesome. We went up to see her at Christmas time, and that year it snowed. Oh my God, it snowed like I think 3 feet in like 18, or no, it like 3 feet in 24 hours or something crazy like that. It was insane. Like we rented a car because we drove like idiots, and it was like literally up to the back trunk lid, like up over the trunk almost when we woke up that next morning. My dad and I both looked at each other like, what the hell? I mean, my dad and I are from New Hampshire, so we're kind of used to the snow, but not that much snow. Like that was more than we've probably seen in a long, long, long time. And it was cold, like you said, windy and cold. Oh my God, it was bad. And the thing I mean, like you said, the people are great. From the ones I've met, and the like you said, it reminds me a lot of where I grew up, because I grew up in a town of like 500 people, and my sister, the town she lives in, is a lot like that. So it very nostalgic for me of where I grew up. And but yeah, it was flat. I grew up in the mountains. Corey and I live in the mountains, and I don't like the flat. I don't like looking over and seeing the next town look like it's an inch tall, road. That's not my thing. But it was, I mean, the sunsets were gorgeous, but yeah, too cold, too much snow, too flat for me. But the people were great. So.
We actually arrived in Minot. We were driving up the summer of '99, and my wife's birthday is 4th of July, and we had to be there by like the 6th. So we had to go ahead and drive on her birthday. But she got the coolest birthday present ever in the drive up there, because we go to, what was that, Bismarck, and then you turn north. And that highway, when you're passing by all the giant lakes, everybody's shooting off fireworks. And it was just the most gorgeous thing we'd ever seen. Just fireworks everywhere. The kids were just ooh and ah and all along the ways. And I'm trying to just like focus on the road, but I'm also just looking over going, oh my gosh, look at that one. And that was a really cool experience.
All right. Well, I didn't want to speak if Dan was going to keep talking.
No, I'm good. I just wanted to get there. There was something when he said that, I was like, oh wow, not many people know of Minot unless they've been there.
Why not?
Yeah.
Yeah, I lived in Colorado, never got any further north than Mount Rushmore, so I can't speak much to any further north than South Dakota myself, but I imagine it's less of all those things you talked about. At least it was in Colorado. So anyways, moving on to what might be more of a personal interest, but Dan, feel free to take this back to any topic that you feel when I throw it to you. You are a writer, and I never, growing up, I was like, oh, I'm going to be a writer. But being an adult, I never actually have wanted to try to publish anything. It's more always just a hobby, something I have fun with, something I try to incorporate with whatever project I'm doing. And so this has always been, kind of like something I've wanted to do. I've wanted to, at one point, I was going to try to get a few comic book writers from my youth that I had like really been attached to growing up. And I got a really positive negative from the first one. And then the writer's strike hit, and I was like suddenly like, well, can they talk about anything? And well, I'll just wait for this to end. And then there was a Comic-Con, and now there's another Comic-Con, and apparently they all got COVID there. So I just keep putting it off and off and off, mostly just because I don't want to get rejected again. But be that as it may, I'm going to take these questions just kind of in the order that I wrote them, in no specific significance. I was wondering, first and foremost, have you met any famous authors yet? Anybody that you were, I guess it doesn't even need to be famous necessarily, just someone that you yourself was like a fan of.
Met is a interesting way to put it, just because of my own podcast. I've interviewed more than 200 authors in my time. The show's on my 6th year. I've met a few authors at Comic-Con. Brandon Sanderson would be one guy.
Oh yeah, he's a few years
back. Yeah, and then after he did his big thing, is that a year ago or less than a year ago, where he did wanted to raise some money, and it was like just blew up to like 30 million.
I think it was the biggest ever so far.
Yeah. So he was cool to meet. Through my show, I've met Steve Alton, who wrote the Meg book.
Oh, right on. I've actually, I was like, that sounds familiar, but I'm not going to pretend to know who that is.
Yeah. So there was the movie that came out and the sequel that just came out as well. Yeah, he wrote those books, and so that was really cool because I had a special bond with that first book, the Meg. My wife got me that book knowing it was okay. Here, monster book, you're gonna like this. It's a giant shark. I was like, yeah, okay, cool. She got me that when our second daughter was born, and our first daughter was coming up on a year old. So they took her to go do photos, and I sat down for like a day with my newborn and just read that book to her. And she's just a couple of days old or a week old or whatever. I sat down and read that book and held on to her and just I went through it like in a day. And it was just such a cool book. And I told him that when I talked to him on the show, and he was laughing because he had just had a little girl as well at about the same time. So we had a little bit of back and forth with that. That was a pretty cool moment. Diane Franklin is an 80s actress that I met. She was in Better Off Dead with John Cusack.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And and others. And then one of my personal favorites as far as famous people goes was Lou Diamond Phillips.
All right. He's in one of my favorite movies ever.
Yeah. Which one's that?
Young Guns. Well, Young Guns, Young Guns 2.
I was kind of like we were talking before about being nervous or anything. I mean, I still get nervous, but yeah, I was all like, I'm getting ready to talk to Chavez. I'm getting ready to talk to Chavez. I'm getting ready to talk to Chavez. I was totally stoked about this. And it's funny, I told him the story afterwards, but I'm listening to him. I see his video, I see his audio, but he's talking to his wife and he's trying to figure out how to get things set up. She's helping him get everything set up, and I'm nervous. But then he once they get set up and she's like, okay, yeah, and then this is all set up and this is all done. And then you're good to go. He goes, all right, great. Thanks a lot, babe. I appreciate it. She goes, and don't forget, after this, you got to walk the dog and we got laundry to do. I was like, oh, yes, ma'am. I know. As soon as I heard that, it was just like, oh, okay, that's right. Yep. We're both
normal.
Yeah. We're both human. We're both normal. And I told him that and afterwards, and he was just cracking up. He's like, yeah, man, I put my pants on one leg at a time. And it was hilarious. So we had a great chat. So that was a lot of fun.
That's so cool. Was that in reference to his role in the Longmire series?
I don't know. I see. That's one of the series I haven't gotten into yet. That I think I've seen the first 2 episodes, and then I got sidetracked with other stuff going on and never got to go back to it. But that's one people keep telling me, like, you read the books, you need to like check it out. So I was like, I know, I need to.
Yeah, I have yet to read the books because like what little I did read was really spot on, like with the show. And I'm like, well, if this is all going to be, just basically the same story, I'm going to have to take some time before I can go back and really read it. But it was a really great show, and he was really great in it. I did before I go on to more questions, I was curious, having interviewed so many different writers, like how is it to schedule some of these? Well, I consider Lou Diamond Phillips to be pretty famous. So like, do you have to kind of schedule them way in advance? Do you tend to keep in touch, like just in case, or like what kind of special techniques do you use to hook these people?
Luck, really, to get connected with them. I had no idea that Lou Diamond Phillips was even a writer. I mean, other than for movies. I just stumbled upon one of his tweets one day that he was talking about his book is coming out in a few months, and it's a science fiction book. And I was like, what? So through my show's Twitter page, I happened to be the first commenter on it. I was like, hey, well, you'll have to come on the show and we'll discuss the book. And he goes, hey, sounds great. And then I get a message from him. And he's like, yeah, hey, I'll get you in touch with my people. And then, they'll reach out to your people and we'll set something up. And I'm like, I'm like looking at my wife going like, look at this. He's going to talk to my people. I'm going to talk to his people. We're going to set this up. And it was just total luck. But we don't really stay in touch, but like I have tweeted back to him a couple times. He's talking about the sequel. And I mentioned like, hey, got to get you back. And he says, oh, absolutely. I had a great time the first time. So we'll do it again. So we'll see. Diane Franklin's been on twice. First time she came on was discussing her biographies about growing up. And then we stayed in touch through email a little bit. She was trying to help me get set up with like, I forget his name now, but he played Booger in the Revenge of the Nerds.
Yeah,
movies.
I know. I knew immediately who you like. I'm seeing him in my mind, but his name,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, and his name just escaped me.
He's in American Dad too.
Yeah,
I can't remember.
Trying to help me get hooked up with him, but he hasn't responded to anything yet. But then, but she came back on again when she wrote a bio behind the scenes thing about Better Off Dead, and we had a good time with that. And so yeah, I get to stay in touch a little bit with her. That's pretty cool. And then some of the other authors that have been like best-selling, New York Times bestsellers, I hear from them once in a while, or we'll kind of give a little feedback back and forth. And that's pretty cool. That's like, man, I get to talk to some of these people. This is like really cool. Like, and I'm like, I feel like I'm just nobody. But then I'll talk to an author who's brand new. I'm their first show they've ever been on, and they're looking at me like, what do I do with this? And oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm on your show. And I'm like, oh man, really? Like, it's like, but that's so cool though, that they feel the same way that I feel talking with other people, you know. And it's you never know how you're going to affect somebody else, and you know what may come from that.
Yeah, for sure. It is interesting how there are levels of fame. So I guess just moving on real quickly, were you who were you influenced by? Who were some of your favorite writers?
Oh man, in the beginning I was influenced very much by actually 80s movies. Growing up, the 80s action movies is what always influenced me, because I grew up writing adventure stories of my friends and I. Back in the 80s, we were always worried about the Russians are going to invade, so like Red Dawn and, any kind of Arnold Schwarzenegger or Sylvester Stallone movie. So I'm writing adventure stories about my friends and I saving the school from terrorist attack or, whatever, the Russians coming in. Different things like that, or that we became a commando unit. Now we're going over into the jungle somewhere.
Right.
Nice.
So there was things like that. And then I started taking classes and learning some things, and a lot of that gets kind of poo-pooed from there. So I kind of toned it down. I was trying to learn some of the techniques and some of the structure and so on. And you got to learn that stuff. But once I became serious about writing, by then I'd been reading more. That's when I'd found Steve Alton, so I was reading more of his stuff, and I really liked those monster books. Robert McCammon is somebody who I just adore his books, and he will write something that's like realistic. Like, okay, here's a British spy that's going to invade into Germany during World War II, and it's all the spy stuff that you could think of. Oh, but he's also a werewolf. Yeah, so it's like there's this throw, this thing that's like out of the left side, and like, oh, this is so cool. And he's got that series, or a couple of books that he did. He's got some other ones called Boy's Life, that as a dad, as a son, I mean, you're going to cry if you read that book. But it's also just so cool. There were so many things that he just taps into that mentality of what it was like growing up, and the relationship you had with your bike, all kinds of things like that. So that was really like one of my big influences whenever I began writing, and I wanted to touch into that. I love being able to write something that's realistic as can be, but also with something just like, where did that come from? How is this? Why is there a monster in this? Or something. So that's been kind of an influence, but I'm kind of coming back around to my 80s roots again lately.
Right. Well, I totally down with the 80s, like anything to do with Commando, Rambo, Rocky, any of that stuff. I too was a writer from around 5th grade. Like I said, never really have the desire to publish anything, but my friends went from being detectives to being Street Fighter / Mortal Kombat fighters. Yeah. So we did a similar kind of group activity, at least in my writing. I do have a couple more here before I dig back in, I wanted to give Dan a chance to ask anything or touch on anything that might have interested him up to now.
Yeah, what got you into writing? Is it something That just from a
You
young
know,
age, or
yeah, as from a young age, it was something I didn't quite realize about myself. That was something I wanted to do. I just did it. I was always very creative. I liked being doing art and building things. I love having a creative outlet, and I've picked up a lot of hobbies over the years with modeling and different things and different stuff. Um, but I always come back to storytelling, and even whether I'm writing it down or whether I'm making it up on the fly, just to tell a story around the campfire with my kids and telling them, something about this creature in the woods, and it's waiting for you to throw a marshmallow at it, something just nuts like that. It was something that was just always there, and my wife has always encouraged it. She started that classes, and then whenever what came down to was whenever I found out I was going to be a grandpa, that's when I was like, oh crap, I was supposed to be a writer by now. I wanted to have a career by now. And so that's when I got serious about it. And another one of those looking in the mirror moments, like, okay, what am I doing to follow my dreams? Like, well, I'm getting up in the mornings and I'm watching DVR, or I'm playing Xbox, or getting a lot of achievements, and I got a great score, but I don't know, maybe my grandkids will love that one day, but I like having the legacy of, hey, here's some of my books I wrote.
right.
I like that better than my Xbox scores.
Right on.
I got serious about that. Now I'd wake up in the morning and start writing, and joined a local writing group, and went from there, and just kind of all of a sudden it started coming together, and it's been a lot of fun ever since.
So you said when you started, or I guess when you started out, correct me if I'm wrong in any of this, because you gave me a lot of info. You said when you started out, your influence was kind of like 80s movies, right?
Yeah.
So how much is your style? You said you're coming back to that kind of now, but how much did it change and kind of flow and then come back to over the years that you've been doing it? Like like you said, you started with like 80s action movies, but like did it turn into something else and you just weren't happy? Or is it just something you just, man, I love this 80s stuff, I want to get back to it?
Well, yeah, I mean, because there for a while I kind of fell into the trap of, well, you got to write great literature, you got to have flowing sentences, you got to have a great style, you got to do all this kind of stuff. And I was trying so hard to write like other people and other ways for a long time. And I think that's what causes people to spin their wheels for a long time, is you're stuck trying to do something that you're not. And my first book, I worked on it for 9 years, just on and off again, until finally what I did was I finally, November's coming up and there's NaNoWriMo that happens every year. So I'd been rewriting those first like 4 or 5 chapters for years, and just thinking like, let me do it again. Let me do it again. Let me do it again. And I finally was like, okay, I'm in the writing group now. They're giving me great advice. They're giving me good tips. And everybody's inviting me to try out NaNoWriMo. So you write a novel, a 50,000 word novel in the month. I thought, let me just start over. Maybe if I just get rid of that critical part of my brain and just focus on getting the words down, I'll find my voice and go from there. And it worked for me. That worked. I sat down. Every time I'd sit down and start thinking like, what's a good way to say this phrase? And I was like, no, just write whatever's basic, come back to it later to edit. And so I would just move on, even if I just wrote something simple as, and he ate her, the monster. Going from there, and I just move on, and then I come back to it later on, and then in editing I can go, oh yeah, okay, because then it kind of comes back to, you're not as focused on, hey, I'm trying to write 2, 3, 5,000 words today. It's, I'm just trying to edit this paragraph, because the rest of it's all right, but here's this paragraph where it's like one line, like, okay, what was I trying to say about this creature or this moment? And once the pressure's off, you can edit it better. So that was something. And it's letting go of that pressure to write something so flowery and so literate was nice. And now I'm coming around, like with my current series, it's more pulpy. It's just action and a lot of quips, from the 80s and stuff like that, and just having fun with it, and it's just keeping it flowing.
Awesome. Yeah, I can definitely relate to what you're talking about. I'm not so much a book or story writer. Well, I guess music tells a story. I like to write music. I've been my mom got me my first guitar when I was right before I turned 15. So since then, off and on for almost 20 years now. I'm not any kind of awesome musician, but I just, it's a hobby. I haven't picked it up in a while. I get the itch and I need to. Yeah, I think about it almost every day now. So that's telling me, hey, pick it back up. But no,
Yeah.
when I would write, even the music part of it, just without the words, like you said, I would like your He Hater or whatever, the Monster Hater. And then I would be like, all right, just do this simple chord change. And then you can come up and maybe dress it up later. Or like that's where my phone or something, I would record what I had and then listen back to it and be like, hey, I can add that there. Kind of like what you said with editing, I can add that there, or I can change this a little bit, or maybe rearrange some stuff. And then when it came to the words, same thing, like you said, just write in my head. I just write like my idea and like words down, and then you kind of organize it and rearrange it and make my little 3-minute, 4-minute, 5-minute story out of my thing. So yeah, I can definitely tell, I can relate to where you're coming from with that on a smaller scale. But it helps me to do like that, like you said, you just write something kind of simple, quote unquote, and then you can come back later and, like you said, dress it up or make it more descriptive or whatever you're looking for. And that's how I would, like you said, just get it out there, and then you can come back and mess with it later and tweak it.
One of the authors I talked to, he had a great phrase, and I don't know if this is his or not, but I've heard him say it several times, and it's you. He's like, you gotta get the words on the page, because you can't polish a turd if it's not there.
True. Yep.
So I got to thinking about that. I was like, wait, so is he saying that my writing's a turd? And then I realized, like, oh yeah, okay, yeah. When you're first writing, yeah, it is shit. So I mean, it's yeah, you got to come back to it, and then you can start cleaning it up, and like, oh hey, look what's here. I got something. So.
Okay, so these last few we're gonna do, and really take your time if you want to, but for the most part, these are simple questions that you can kind of rapid through if you want to. First, do you outline your stories, or do you go by the Stephen King method, for lack of a better way? You just kind of like right by your seat of your pants.
A little bit of both. I'm kind of a plancer. My first book, I'd worked on it for so long that once I finally got going on it, like I knew what I wanted to do. So I think I'd outlined it in my mind for so long. I finally got there. I always knew how it was going to end. That's the weird thing, is I have an idea of how my stories are going to start, maybe, but I always have an ending in mind, and it's just getting to that end. Same thing with my second story. My second one, that was one I didn't plan any of it. I just had this idea. I knew how it would end, and I just sat down and started going to it. I wrote that one pretty quick. I wrote that one in just a few months, which was mind-blowing for me after spending years on my first book. Now I have learned what's good about planning out some of your writing. Now that I have a series in mind, the book one, no problem. Again, I know what I want to do with book one. Let's just go with it. Let's have fun. Book two, though, I got halfway through book two and realized I'm writing stuff down for book three. I was trying to figure out, why am I struggling with this? Wait a minute, why is he here? He's not supposed to be here yet. And like, oh crap. So I had like 6 or 8 chapters I had to take out and put into another file for book three later on, and then go back to it. And then so what I did was I write with Scrivener, and Scrivener allows you to move your work around. So you can actually plan out different chapters. And what's been fun is, even if I decide later on, like, okay, yeah, you know what, this should really come first, instead of like in a Word, you got to copy, paste, and search for it and find it. This is all mapped out like on a cork board, and you can just like, oh yeah, chapter 4 is now 1, chapter 8 is now 16. You can move it around, and it's so cool. It's very intuitive, and makes it a lot easier. So that was cool. That made it easier. So I went ahead in the rest of book 2 for my Bandit series. I just started like, okay, here he's going to go here, then he's going to go this, then he's going to find Worlds of Fun, and then he's going to find this and that. And just simple lines, so that way each chapter I would know where I'm going with it, and I could stay away from my ideas for the next book.
Right on. Cool. I'm getting like good advice if I ever do feel like taking anything further. So you kind of sort of touched on this, so I'll go ahead and ask this one next. Do you write chronologically, or do you try to write chronologically, or are you just as happy writing the ending first since you know that already?
I do write chronologically. Every once in a while, like when I first did that NaNoWriMo, I would skip a chapter. If I did not know what I was doing, I'll write a simple line, maybe like big fight scene here, move on.
Wow.
And
Okay.
and
So you're
just
skipping an entire chapter.
I would jump, yeah, I'll jump, maybe even a couple of chapters just to get into, because like in during NaNoWriMo, you're trying to reach that goal of 50,000 words. And if I'm just like, I don't know what I'm going to do with this, so I'll skip over it. So that first time I did it, I was like, oh, this is so cool. I'm done. I finished the book. And then I go back and I'm reading, and then I come across, something happens here. Like, oh, oh, yeah, what was going to happen here? Oh yeah, that's right. This is what's going to happen. But that goes back to like we were talking about. I mean, by then I knew what I wanted to happen. But yeah, chronologically, this is what I write all of it, just because it's getting to the ending that I already know is going to happen, and sometimes it changes a little bit. Sometimes the killer is different than what I had in mind by the time I get there.
Okay, this is not the next question, but you said something. So when you say the killer is not who you had in mind, do you mean that you get to the end and suddenly like that character is doing something else and is no longer the killer, or that character is no longer in the story and the killer is someone else?
It's kind of all of the above.
Wow, so it could be anything then.
Yeah, things can change dramatically from what I had in mind. I've had moments where I had a character I inserted to fill out a scene, and then all of a sudden that character came back. And when you get into some of those flow states, it's weird, because you hear some of us crazy authors talk about like, oh yeah, I can hear the characters talking to me, and I kind of understand what they're talking about, because you get a character that wants to tell you like, hey, yeah, and then I did this, and then I did this, and I'm going, wait, you're like a fourth level character. You're not even supposed to be here. Like, get out of this. And so then I got to look at it too, though, and go, wait, all right, so is what's happening though good? Is it going to change everything too dramatic from what I have in place, or can I save this for maybe another story? So that's kind of an interesting aspect of it too, is to go from there. And so yeah, so maybe like the ending is not what I wanted. My second book, I knew how it was going to end, but I didn't know who was the killer, whether or not the person I had in mind was going to be the killer, or whether they were not going to be, if it was all set up. It wasn't until I got there that I was like, oh yeah, it has to be this.
You almost found out with the rest of us.
Yeah.
So two more real quick questions. Well, hopefully this last one might be a bit complicated. But first off, and the background kind of hints this, but what would you consider your favorite genre, or what genre do you write in?
I write in thriller genres, but I kind of expand out to wherever. So like my first one was a paranormal thriller, kind of in the line of like the old 80s slasher movies. It's I didn't realize it was going to be young adult when I wrote it, but when I was done, everybody's like, man, this is a great young adult novel, because it follows this teenage girl and things. And I was like, oh yeah, yeah, okay. So I had to touch up a few scenes so that they weren't quite as graphic or as what it was, so that way I can list it on Amazon for young adult without getting into trouble. But I still feel a little weird whenever somebody comes to me and is like, oh yeah, my 13-year-old, could they read this? I'm like, that's not my place to decide. Like, I don't know what your 13-year-old can read. So I'll tell the parent like, well, there's, this happens and this happens. So, maybe you can use that as a talking point.
Right on.
And go from there.
Yeah, I've actually heard that a lot of writers that, they were like, I wrote the story that I wanted to write. And then my agent was like, oh, so this is going to be for young adults. And they're like, wait, what?
Yeah. Yeah. My second one was a psychological thriller. And then I'm writing I call it a 80s retro sci-fi series, is the one I'm writing right now. That's the one that takes place in the 80s. It's a mixture of V the miniseries with Red Dawn and a little blast from the past.
Well, I always say that the best ideas are combinations of different genres thrown together. You can't just write a story anymore that's just like, okay, this guy's a detective and he solves the crime. Like you have to be like, oh, and he's also a werewolf, or like he kills people in his sleep or something.
The things that are special to you, I think, is when we write our best. Now you can get, well, I was invited to an anthology last year and I didn't know what I was going to do. And then I had this like a little bit of an idea, and I still tied into that story with stuff that I like. Music, easy 70s music was what I tapped into with that story.
Little Michael McDonald.
Yeah. I mean, it was like, do you like pina coladas? I had, that kind of stuff. So I was, I had my playlist was playing a lot of that while I'm writing this little short story about a fudge factory. And I'm just cracking myself up with this little story. And then I got an invite to come back again, and same kind of thing. It's like, now it's just going into the writer side of it, and to see what can be influenced, and you just never know, I guess.
Right on. It's interesting how life will take you, especially in your situation. I like, from where we started at the beginning, I would not have thought, even knowing your life, it's strange that we've got here to the end, as a published writer. It's just not something you would expect. But I'm going to go ahead and bypass this last question just in the interest of time, and let Dan get anything out that he had remaining before we kick it to you to move into promotion mode. Dan, did you have anything?
More of a comment on the last time we were talking about how my music and stuff, how I take a lot of what you said is very similar to how I feel about writing music. One of the other things I was going to say, but I kind of forgot until Corey took over. When you said try not to write like take somebody's style, that hit home with me too, because I was stuck in a rut one time, or a lot. I get stuck in a rut like, oh, I want to write like Motley Crue, or I want to write like Metallica, and I'm just like, but you're not freaking Metallica, you're not Nikki Sixx, and you're not Kirk Hammett. You're you. Write like you. Don't write like them. I mean, you'll hear what I like to listen to. You'll hear the influence that they give you, but don't try to write a Metallica song. Write something that's yours. Don't try to copy, or use that as a template. Yes, but don't try to be them, because it's not gonna. You'll have more trouble and you'll get frustrated, and you'll want to quit more often than you already do, probably. Sometimes I know there's a lot of times where I just want to throw my guitar away and quit, but but no, you keep going. But yeah, I just wanted to comment on that. Oh, and while you were talking, sorry to make noise, but you were talking about your little girl after taking a bath, going out and getting dirty. Well, I had these in my pocket. They're little rocks for the listening audience. My daughter picked these up on our walk earlier, and they were in my back pocket, digging away at my ass. So yeah.
Did you need to hold on to those for her, huh?
Yeah. Hey, Daddy, hold these. I'm like, yeah, okay. Yeah. But yeah, so yeah, I know exactly where you're coming from with the whole girls will be boys kind of thing.
Right on. Yeah. For me, it's awesome. It's Buckeyes, the little brown acorn looking things. He's just like, he wants to collect them. I don't know, until he doesn't, and then he doesn't care anymore. So that pretty much, like I said, is the extent of all of our varied questions. We jumped you back and forth from topic to topic, and we apologize for not having a little bit more organized than that. But as I said, this part we want to give to you to kind of hit anything that you didn't, or re-hit anything that you want to spend more time on as far as what you got going on. I know you got your podcast. You obviously got some books, may have one coming out soon. So go ahead and take this time to tell our surprisingly growing audience about what you've got going on.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So yeah, I've got the Sample Chapter podcast. That's almost bi-weekly anymore. I'll have an author, and I changed the format recently where 1 week I do the interview, and then the next week is the chapter reading by the guest. and that'll come on there. So I'm featuring them for 2 weeks and promoting them. And I actually came up with that idea when my first book was coming out. I was trying to figure out, like, okay, I was thinking about maybe doing a podcast, and how would I promote my books, and how do I do this kind of stuff? And all of a sudden I realized, I could put the two together and talk to other authors and make a platform for them to come on. So I've been doing this since 2018. And there was 4 years of that being weekly. And about the time I hit episode 200 was when I kind of had a little bit of a burnout, and a lot of things happened in my personal life where things changed, my schedule changed and all that. So now it's been kind of every other week almost, and getting my schedules, but I'm keeping up with it, still doing regular episodes, and until the day that comes that I can do some more. But show's available on all platforms, anywhere you want to go to find it, including YouTube. Whenever you go to YouTube, you'll see the book cover for the book that they're reading from, and that seems to be a pretty cool thing. Everybody really likes that, because even though we shouldn't, we still judge a book by its cover. And they see something they like, and that's what they want to hear from. And then I've got my books are out there. It's that time of year where my first book, the paranormal book, seems to start picking up and selling again. And that one's based on a urban legend, a ghost story where I grew up, about a haunted bridge. Cool. And that one, it like I said, it always seems to pick up around this time of year, and so that's a lot of fun. I've got my series. It's called the Bandit Chronicles. Like I said, that's a 80s. This is my love story to the 80s, essentially. I mean, in essence, it's a kid who goes into hiding. He has a neighbor that had a bunker built in under his house that he thought nobody knew about, but of course, all the kids knew about it. So when aliens invade in late '89, he and his brother go into hiding into this bunker, and his brother doesn't make it, but the boy spends the next several years learning how to fight by watching VHS movies of Schwarzenegger and Stallone and all the action movies. And now he comes back out with a Crocodile Dundee hat and a sword. There can be only one.
Nice.
He's taken the fight back to the aliens. He drives a Trans Am, so that's where everybody starts calling him Bandit.
Hell yeah.
And the first book was a whole lot of fun to write. I just went nuts with it, and with all of my stuff I could do. That was another thing where I did not know what was going to happen until all of a sudden, hey, Motley Crue was doing on tour in Missouri at that point, so they're in my first book.
Right on.
I have a big finale at Arrowhead Stadium, which that's been a fun aspect to it. As I try to pick places that I can put into it. So book 2 that I'm writing right now, there's a place called Subtropolis. It's in northern Kansas City, and it's an underground limestone cavern that's been around for decades. And the Hunt family, actually, they started this and they turned it into storage. And you've got film storage, all kinds of anything you can imagine is there. I believe that's the biggest collection of stamps from the post office is there as well, because it's the perfect climate. Anyway, Bandit is trying to secure this location for the rebellion that he is now officially a part of, and helping them out. He's trying to secure this location to help them out, and then there's a big finale at Worlds of Fun.
Right. So have you been to all these places personally, or did just read about them, found them interest, and wanted to write about them?
Worlds of Fun I've been to several times. Arrowhead I've been to a couple of times. Subtropolis, I have an aunt who actually worked in it for 20-something years with the post office. So I was talking to her, getting some information. I talked to or emailed one person from their office, or the main Subtropolis office, wanted to get some more information, but kind of like what happened with Arrowhead, the people that were like, don't worry about it. Like, we can't give you all the secrets about the stadium, but whatever you make up will be fine. And I was like, okay, cool. So yeah, I'm just kind of making it up and just using my imagination. It's like, that works. So
that sounds plausible enough.
Yeah.
I mean, in a book with aliens, you could go pretty far and no one's going to really question you.
Yeah. I mean, and those are things that I'm like, this doesn't have to be, that big of a deal. The toughest thing I had for that series was trying to figure out uh, when are the aliens going to attack? Because anything after that date, there's no more movies. I can't use music or movie references from past that. So there is no Christmas Vacation. I was like, oh my gosh, like I had it queued up and everything. And I was like, wait a minute, can I use this line? I can't use this line. Oh my gosh, but I can use Scrooged. So that works. You know, I had to go through, I have Young Guns 1. I don't have Young Guns 2.
Well, you've also got Ghostbusters if you want it.
I have Ghostbusters. Yep. So that's
just watched that last night.
So I had different things like that, but yeah, book 2 is Bandit. Book 1's Bandit Rising. That's already available, and book 2 is Bandit Underground, and that's coming out in December.
Right on. I'm gonna write that. And so, yeah, anything else that you had going on that we hadn't touched on?
Oh boy. So I got the anthology story that I'm writing right now. That's going to come out sometime next year. And that's about a fictional town in Missouri. And we're all writing stories that we're working together to make it a cohesive, or each story could cross-reference another story within the book. When I did that last year with that story, with my Fudge Company story, it had some nods here and there, but most of the time we didn't know each other's stories that well. So there was like, oh, somebody died here, but then they're back in this story. So we had some little things like that. So now we're working together a little bit better with this anthology, so we don't have that kind of mistakes and reference a location or something. And that's fun. But hopefully next year I'll have book 3 with Bandit and maybe another standalone story, just depending on what time does, and see what kind of authors I can get for the show then next year as well. But hoping to get out into more events next year and really start establishing, getting kind of my writer and author and show life kind of back together and on schedule again.
Right on. One last thing I did want to touch on, since I mentioned it just then, you kind of touched on it tangentially at times. Could you give any advice to those dads out there that, like you, like me, we have a short period of free time each day, and we typically have to fill that with, in your case, it might be writing or maybe podcasting, maybe working out. How do you, in your personal life, decide how you're going to devote that time? Because you said at one time you were apparently really, overweight. You're clearly not anymore. So how did you find, your kind of equilibrium with that?
It just comes back to that man in the mirror moments, deciding what's important to you and determining, am I doing what I can do to reach the goals that I want to do? So, am I doing what I need to do as a father? Am I doing what I need to do as a husband, and going above and beyond in those aspects? And then it comes down to, okay, so if you're sitting down and just watching reruns, could you be doing some writing at the same time? And I do a lot of my writing in the evenings as well, when my wife and I are watching reruns. If we're watching something new, laptop goes away, we have focus time together so we can watch something together. But if we're watching reruns of something and it's just on for background noise, usually she's playing a game on her phone and I can type away and be doing that, or even editing an upcoming episode. But mornings were my big time. That was where I realized, like, okay, how much sleep do I need to function? And then when can I get up so I can get up? And now it's like, okay, I gotta get up, I gotta work out, and then I start writing. I've got things to do before I go to work, and then now I have it's become such a part of my life now that I fit in my writing wherever I can. I finished my second book in line at the movie theater on my phone. I was waiting to see the last Avengers movie, and literally I got it done. We were getting our concessions, so we went and sat down. I picked my phone back up and I was typing away through the opening credits, and then hit stop and showed it to my wife, and she was just like, "That's great. Shut up. Movie's on." I was like, but I couldn't relax because I knew I was like right there at the end of it. I had to get it out because I was not going to be able to watch the movie. I'd be thinking about what if they did this instead? And yeah, just making the time, look at your life, be realistic with yourself. It's where can you make some changes to go for your goals that you want to do, whether it's working out, whether it's finding a hobby or writing or whatever. And not to say that any of the other is a bad thing. I still like to play some games on my phone, and I still will pick up the Xbox every once in a while. I had knee surgery last year, and perfect opportunity for me to pick up what was it, Far Cry.
That's a good one.
Just be obsessed for a week or two until it was time to get back to the real world.
Right on. Yeah, here lately, I don't have nearly as much time to really get down on the video games as I used to, but I did love me some Far Cry, some Skyrim, some Grand Theft,
Oh gosh. Yep.
Assassin's Creed, all the hits. They hooked me just like they did everybody else, and it's almost a pain not to be able to play some of them. Sometimes I see yet another sequel coming out, and I haven't even played the one before that, and I'm just like, oh my god, what's wrong with me?
Yep.
But that's interesting. That's good advice. And I appreciate you. You're bringing honesty with that, as well as some wisdom as well. So we're gonna wind things down here at the end, and as I usually do, I'm going to kick it to Dan. Dan, you can throw out anything else that might have come up, in your head, and other than that, take us down to everybody's favorite part of the show.
All right, no, I'm good. I don't have anything else, and we always end on a high note. We have a running joke to the visual audience, so forgive me for my prop, but I like to give a dad joke, and this is the dad joke championship belt. We're both huge wrestling fans, so what better way? All right, dad joke time. What do you call a wreath made of $100 bills?
At this point, I don't know why I even tried to think of an answer because I don't think I've ever answered one.
You say that every episode.
Yeah, I forget it every episode.
Man, got me. I don't know.
What's the answer?
Right. What do you call a wreath of $100 bills? A wreath of Franklins.
God, it's always so simple. It's always right there in front of me. It's like all you did is hold up a clear sheet with a light behind it, and yet I still can't see it. All right. Well, that was a good one, though. That made me smile, and it made my brain hurt all at the same time. It's amazing. We cut these. I may or may not have mentioned this, but we cut the best of these out into reels and post them on all the social medias. And for some unknown reason, the dad jokes tend to get the most views. I don't know if it's just a universal thing these days that everybody loves dad jokes, even if you're not a dad, but they will get into the thousands sometimes. It's pretty crazy. So thank you for fulfilling your responsibilities there, Dan. You've more than likely managed to hold on to that belt yet another week. I've not got any emails or texts or direct messages about anyone challenging. So Big Daddy Dan's going to go ahead and hold on to that title for yet another week. Here, one day soon, we're going to be talking about Roman Reigns' length. He's going to be holding for you. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Who? I don't care nothing about that.
We'll get into Bruno Sammartino range here pretty soon.
Oh, Jesus. What was that, 1,000 or something days?
It was like years.
I think at some point,
7 years. We
might have to have a challenger for that to hold any weight. I don't think you can go 6 or 7 years with 0 challengers and it still be respectable. So once again, if I haven't said it already, Jason, thank you so much for joining us. You were super fun to talk to, even if I personally am more interested in what you got to say maybe than some of our non-writer fans. But you made me, I mean, like I said, I've never really lately had the itch to publish, but you've definitely given me the itch to like break out my notebook again and get some lines down. You were like, you would say something and I'd be like, oh yeah, but I'm like, no, this isn't about you. This isn't about you. No, like I know you want to say, oh, you do this or you like that, but just let him talk. So once again, I appreciate all you've given us as far as your time and your knowledge. And Dan, thanks again for taking the time. I know you got to get to that little girl and put her to bed. So
yep.
You guys have a good rest of your weekend. And from your two dads, I guess I will check you later.
Check you later.
See you, everybody. Thanks a lot.